What is up? What is up? What is up? We got another episode coming at you from the Four Trained Savages podcast. Rob, we got an awesome guest here today.
Awesome
Super
guest.
pumped. Brian, been following you for a while. Bryan Hoch with us from MLB Network, if I'm correct, and MLB.com.
MLB Network, MLB.com. Yep.
Awesome.
All
Covers Yankees. He's our go-to for Yankees news. I know all offseason, especially Brian. I'll give you some credit here. Any rain delay, you were the first one on it, like without a doubt. But Brian, thank you so much for your time. Rob, what's up? How we doing today?
We're doing good. Glad to have the great Bryan Hoch on the pod. It's awesome.
Thank you. Well, I can explain to you why the rain delay, I'm always first, because I'm watching the tarp come out and I'm the one saying, come on. So I want to share my misery with all of you and make sure that you know that we're about to sit there for 40 minutes and stare at the tarp for no reason. So,
hey, it keeps me engaged.
You got to be good at something, right? I guess it's a gift, really, to be able to see the tarp coming out and then tell Twitter world that it's coming out.
I mean, Yankees Twitter is something. There's always something flying off the wall, and you never know what's true. But we see something from you coming from you, Brian. We have a lot of confidence in it, so we appreciate that.
I hope so. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Rob, you want to kick it off?
Yeah. So we'll just start off like a lot of our recent pods have been talking about. I mean, kind of the same vibe of just talking about the Yankees in the offseason. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners that are going to be listening to this have already really kind of heard you, but just to go over it again, what were your major takeaways? Now we see them, basically the Yankees are running it back this year, and we see that they're bringing back a lot of same pieces, some new faces to the pitching staff. So it's looking like we're running it back with the same squad. What I really, our expectations for the season, especially us as Yankee fans, is this is the time to do it. The American League has really kind of, we would say Tampa really kind of went back with losing their two starting pitchers. And the American League, we have rising teams such as the White Sox, and Toronto's looking like they're getting better. So basically, it's looking like this is a very good window of opportunity for them to at least get to the World Series finally in these past 4 seasons that we've been wanting them to get that 28th ring. So what are kind of your expectations heading into the season? Big kind of things to pay attention to, and, reflecting on what they did this offseason so far, there's still a little bit of time left to go.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You say that the window is there and they're in that window, but the window is closing.
Yes.
I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep this whole group together. So yeah, you're right. They're running it back with largely the same group. We're seeing some, you take out the James Paxton and you take out Jay Happ and you plug in Corey Kluber and you plug in Jameson Taillon. But the big one for me was bringing back DJ LeMahieu, because I didn't see any way that team, we were talking about them in 2020 as a World Series contender. I didn't see how we were going to talk about them in 2021 if you take away their best player the last 2 years running. So I thought they had to get that one done. And if they hadn't gotten DJ, I think it would have been a completely different offseason for the Yankees. But the fact that they were able to get that done, the 6-year deal, DJ's probably going to retire as a Yankee, which is kind of cool. I think he's going to age well in Yankee Stadium because he's not a big, power hitting guy. He's a drive the ball to the gaps kind of guy, and Yankee Stadium is going to work well for him. So as long as he stays healthy, and I feel like that's the story we always tell with the Yankees. It's if they can stay healthy. Oh, yes. Yeah, they're going to, and the last 2 years we've dealt with the next man up thing. And I'm a little tired of that storyline. I'd like to see guys stay healthy and be on the field. It was cute in 2019 when you had, the Mike Tauchmans coming out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, wow, they're going to go to the playoffs. But it's kind of old now. I want to see this team stay together. I want to see Aaron Judge play a full year again. I'd like to stop writing injury updates for a while. So let's see if they can make that happen.
Stop the next man up thing. We don't want that anymore. We just want.
In 2019.
It was
really cute. I thought, it was great. What a great story. They're gonna go win the World Series with like these guys you never heard of, but didn't happen. So let's try something else.
That Mike Tauchman, that was just Mike Trout in disguise, if we're being real, for that
awesome.
60 days.
He was awesome 2019. He took a little step back last year, and I'm not exactly sure where he fits. But he caught lightning in a bottle there in 2019 at the very least.
Absolutely.
A question that I have real quick for you with like the DJ stuff. Obviously, they needed to get the deal done, But if you would like have any insight to exactly what was the back and forth between the two sides. Now, the Yankees, was it like the Yankees were kind of really pushing for the less money or the less you like, and was DJ seriously getting upset with them, or was because those were like rumored reports that I would hear on New York radio and everything, and they were, they're really playing hardball to try and get that number down, or the years are certainly not down, but what was kind of the whole dynamic really between the organization and DJ that whole time?
You're exactly right. I think they had two very different ideas of what they wanted that contract to look like. And the Yankees' initial offer was much lower than what he actually wound up getting. I believe it was 4 years. So, clearly they had to compromise there. And I think it took a while. It was kind of like a staring contest between them. But in the end, I thought DJ was very upfront. He made it clear he wanted to stay in New York. He was willing to look elsewhere. And at some point he had to entertain the idea that maybe he wasn't going to come back, but the Yankees needed him back. DJ wanted to come back. It just made too much sense not to happen. So they were able to find that compromise by knocking it down to $15 million a year. He still gets paid. He's getting $15 million for 6 years, and that takes him through age 38. So the Yankees had to give a little bit on the back end. Is he going to be a $15 million player in 6 years? I don't know. But it doesn't matter because you're paying for right now. It helps them get under 210. And, it made sense for both sides. So you deal with that down the line. It's kind of like running up your credit card and hey, look, you need the thing now, right? And I'll figure out how to pay for that later. I don't know if it's still going to work in 6 years. You're buying a microwave or something, but I need a microwave right now. So, you just deal with it. But I thought they needed each other. They had to find a way to make it happen. And, once they got DJ, I figured it was going to be pretty quiet the rest of the offseason. And, they've actually made some interesting moves with Kluber and Tyone, but I don't expect them to do too much more now.
Yeah.
Brian, not that it matters, but do you think, now not that it matters, do you think that the Yanks still land DJ if they don't bump up their initial offer that was rumored?
I don't know. I guess he probably would have gone to the highest bidder, whatever that would be. And so if Toronto or LA,
Toronto was at 4 years, 78 million, I think it was.
Yeah, that's what we heard too. So look, I think that, loyalty only takes you so far. DJ told us that he once thought he would spend his entire career in Colorado, and that didn't quite work out. So I think that if the Yankees didn't come in and step to the plate with what DJ needed to get, that security there, I think he could have gone somewhere else, but luckily for the Yankees, he didn't.
Hey, we're happy. Hey, we're happy to have him. So
we are more than happy to have him. So like you mentioned earlier, with the Yankees are making a lot of interesting kind of high risk, high reward or I would say low risk kind of with Kluber and Tyone. I would say with Kluber less so because they did give him a good amount of money, but the Tyone I would say is a little bit lower risk. So what initially when I saw because I think it was on the same date with DJ and Kluber. So when the Kluber deal happened, I was thinking to myself, well, okay, they hadn't Tanaka obviously now signed with the Golden Eagles, and it's a really good. I think if you get a Kluber that is on, like, that is a big time plus, and that is a big pitching arm that the Yankees would need in their pitching staff. But it's also, as a fan, I was saying, okay, you probably maybe could have given it to a more reliable kind of starter with Tanaka, but it probably would have been a little higher of a price, right? So, what do you feel about the pitching staff going in? I mean, we're looking at it like there are a lot of question marks, but if any of them, like if a good amount of them can pan out this year, the pitching staff will be much better than it was in recent years.
If two of them can pan out.
Well, and that's how you got to look at it. It's kind of like a lottery ticket in a lot of ways. And, I'm an optimist at this time of year. Look, it's spring training. It's happy, fun time. Everybody's in the best shape of their lives. Like, everybody's going to go out and throw 200 innings. And is that really going to happen? Is Corey Kluber going to make 30 starts? Is Tyone? Probably not. But if you can get enough of them, like if Kluber can give you 15 or 20 good starts, that's why it's so important that they have all these guys in the back end here who are going to be competing for that 5 spot. The Michael King, Clark Schmidt, Davy Garcia. These guys are going to get chances. Maybe a Jonathan Loaizaga. They're going to be important at some point. So, push them to the back now. And now you're thinking, you go in thinking, look, Corey Kluber, 2-time Cy Young Award winner. If he can be anything like he was, he's awesome. Can he get there? I don't know.
Yeah.
But they have the inside track on that because he's been working with Eric Cressey, and Cressey knows him better than anybody. So I would think that if there were red flags and it was like, wow, this guy is done, like, don't get him, the Yankees would have known that, right? So it's a gamble for sure. With Tyone, he hasn't pitched in over a year, but there's a long history of guys coming back from Tommy John. Maybe not so many guys come back from the second Tommy John, but there's another guy that Garrett Cole vouched for. They were teammates in Pittsburgh, and he said, look, this guy's going to work his tail off. Like, he's legit. Take a chance on him. And so they gave up a pretty good prospect in Miguel Yajure, but like I'm talking about with all these guys, where was Yajure going to fit behind King and Schmidt and Garcia? So you roll the dice there. And I don't know how the other 3 prospects are going to turn out with Pittsburgh, but that's a team that needed to rebuild anyway. So they need to take as many chances as they can and get guys there. But I kind of like the rotation. I do. Yeah. Tanaka, we knew what we were going to get out of Tanaka. You knew what you were going to see out of Tanaka. We all had a pretty good idea of that. Now it's a gamble. Will Kluber be better? I don't know the answer to that, but I think that, that's kind of the fun of this, is that you take a chance, and there's high upside there. And look, if it doesn't pan out, we've seen this before. I think back to Troy Tulowitzki looked awesome in spring training.
Yeah.
He hit a big home run against the Blue Jays. Wow, Tulo's back. And then that was it. He hit 1 home run, and I think that was it. And then he faded away and disappeared.
That's
Is Kluber
DJ
going to be
LeMay
another Tulo, or is he going to, bounce back and be what he was, the Klubot back in Cleveland? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm really interested to find out. The good news is, if he winds up being more like a Tulo, they have other guys, and it's going to take 8 or 9 guys to make starts for this team anyway. And I didn't even mention Luis Severino's coming back in June or July.
Yep.
Domingo Germán will be back. So you're counting on a lot of guys who didn't pitch last year, but if they can come back and be what they once were, then they're in good shape.
Yeah. Cash is really going with the, like, me being a, fan that really, I was a big fan of a lot of Yankee fans, really big fans of Tanaka, but Cash is kind of looking to answer questions for the pitching staff, the starting pitching staff that's been, lackluster in the past years. And I think he's really going out on a limb this year and, taking some calculated risks, and we'll see how it pans out. But some more news around the Yankees that I just would want to get your opinion on. The whole Gary Sanchez dynamic and Cashman dynamic that happened, what is it now? Last week or a couple days ago or this past weekend. What is, like, I usually when you see an athlete on a team that's kind of we knew how he was struggling, and we knew how poorly he really was kind of playing in comparison of how he should really be playing. And he was looked at as this big bat to pair with Giancarlo and Aaron, and it just didn't really click at all last year. And obviously the defense too. And for him to then come out with the statements that he did about him not really knowing why he wasn't playing, how he was benched and stuff as that. And then Cashman really just going really at him with it and just nipping it in the butt really, really fast. And like you would hear the Aaron Boone comments where it would be kind of, towing the line a little bit and not really ripping into Gary too hard. And it reminded me a lot of that year when they had Girardi still as their manager, and Girardi just went right at him and just said, you need to play better. So I think it's finally Cashman really taking the approach such as he did and really just kind of lighting a fire under him. What did you take for that, of those comments that were the kind of back and forth, not the direct back and forth, but that were made to the media?
It reminded me a lot of when Cash picked up the phone and back in the A-Rod days, and he said that Alex needs to shut the F up. I feel like when that fuse gets short, it's short, and he was just not in the mood that day to talk about. I mean, we all saw Gary's year. He had 147, and he wasn't great behind the plate. I think he He led the majors in errors, maybe he was second for among catchers. Like, it wasn't a good year in any respect. So the idea that Gary didn't understand why he was benched, he knew why, and Aaron Boone explained that to him, and so that conversation had already been had. So I think that, I don't want to speak for Cash, but in that moment, he was probably just tired of it. He was ready to turn a page to 2021. And look, they were all disappointed. They all thought they had a team that could win the World Series last year. And, I think you look at Gary, and their starting catcher was not able to play in 5 out of the 7 of their postseason games. It was not behind the plate. And whose fault was that? It was Gary's fault. And but now you move on. Clearly, they believe there's more in the tank with Gary. They could have non-tendered him, but instead they actually gave him a pay raise. He's going to make $6.35 this year, and he gets another chance to turn it around and prove that the real Gary Sanchez is the one that we remember from 2016, 2017, and not the guy we saw last year. Because, for whatever reason, I feel like he was underwater with a lot of stuff last year. I thought they threw a lot at him in spring training with the one knee down thing. And
that was weird.
Yeah, I thought that there was too much going on. And maybe for a guy like Gary, when you're feeding him all this data and all this information and all these numbers, sometimes you just got to go up there and swing the bat and hit. That was the one thing Yogi Berra used to say, was that you can't hit and think at the same time. And maybe that's true for a lot of guys. Maybe, Gary is just an intuitive player where he needs to just hold the bat and see the ball and hit the ball. And you can't have 25,000 other things going on and be thinking about pitch framing and all that. So maybe just keeping it simple is big for Gary. And that was one thing, we had Pudge Rodriguez on a couple of days ago, and Pudge said that he would like to see Gary just go back to playing the game he was and not do all of this extraneous stuff. And Pudge hasn't played now in 10 years. He understands the game has changed with the data and everything, but at some point it's a simple game, and especially blocking balls in the dirt, catching balls like that. That's been the weakest part of Gary's game. It's something you'll live with if Gary's hitting the way he was, but if he's not hitting, then you got to give it over to somebody else.
Yeah. I also did see that Pudge interview on MLB Network. In terms, other than the one knee down thing, what else do you think that the Yankees were really throwing at him that worked? What do you think it's more? Because I from as an outsider, I'm not as familiar as you are, but when looking at it, what else could they really possibly be throwing at him other than maybe the fans' expectations? Or that's really kind of what I'm looking at as an outside fan, and I'm saying, well, what else is it really? For lack of better terms, they really kind of moved on from Joe Girardi mainly because of that relationship. Like, that could be looked at as a reason why they moved on. They gave him a little bit more control with Aaron Boone and being able, or not with Aaron Boone, but more so Aaron Boone's not as harsh as it seems with Gary, like Girardi was. So, like, what else do you kind of take it as? Do you think it is really mainly the fans and then some little things that he had in the past spring training in 2020, or is that kind of, am I looking at that wrong? Or
no, you're not looking at it wrong. I think 2020 was a hard year for a lot of players, and certainly the pandemic interrupting what was going on in spring training didn't help. And so I know that Gary went back down to the Dominican, and he continued to work with Tanner Swanson, the catching coach, but they were doing it all over Zoom. So I don't think that was
that's tough.
Yeah, that's hard for everybody, and so how much can you really get done when you're blocking balls on video or pitch framing on video and then sending it to the guy? And Tanner was, I think, in Utah or Colorado, and whatever. They did the best they could with what they were trying to work with, but 2020 was just a weird year. And then I think, knowing it was a short season, Gary obviously got off to a slow start. And then I think that kind of snowballed on him when he was in the batter's box and you look up and you're hitting 150 or whatever, and it's frustrating. And you start to press. And the other thing I would say about, in Gary's defense with that pitching staff, is that is one of the tougher pitching staffs to catch, because you got a lot of guys who throw hard, a lot of different angles, a lot of guys with kind of different repertoires, and they're not afraid to bounce balls. Yeah, I mean, think about a guy like Zach Britton, for example, and then
nightmare.
And you got that sinker, and then you got Chapman coming in right after him. Completely different kind of things, and you really get beat up back there with that pitching staff. And that was one thing Kyle Higashioka said to me was that I think people underestimate how tough that staff is to catch. And Higgy's obviously a very good defensive catcher. That's his calling card. That's why he's in the big leagues, because he can catch back there, and it's hard for him. So for a guy like Gary, who is really, let's be honest, he's in the big leagues because he can hit, and he can catch a little bit, and he'll catch good enough to keep his bat in the lineup. That's really who Gary is. Higgy's there because he can catch, and it's tough for him. So that just kind of tells you how difficult of a challenge it will be for Gary in 2021 too.
Yeah.
Bryan, do you think Gary could be a player on, say you have a list of potential breakout Yankees this year? Do you think Gary could make that list?
Sure. I mean, the thing that when we talk about breakout, Gary's already broken out. He was the fastest player in AL history to 100 home runs. We know who Gary is when he's right.
Yeah.
I would put him on my list for like comeback player of the year. Yeah, maybe that's a better way to put him. Hey, they could have a lot of comeback players if Kluber or Tyone or, maybe even a Darren O'Day. Actually, O'Day pitched pretty well, but, Stanton, who didn't play much last year during the regular season, but then was on fire in the postseason. But yeah, if you wanted me to pick a comeback player candidate for this Yankee team, I'll go with Gary, because I think he's going to be motivated. He's so much better than what we saw last year. And last year was so bad that I think whatever he does in 21
will be better.
The only way is
we're only going up.
The only way
is worse, then the Yankees will never give him a chance to be worse. They'll just pull the plug.
Do you think by August, if he isn't really doing anything, and we're still seeing the signs of 2020 a little bit and the lack putt, do you think that they may just say, okay, we're going to move on from him by the trade deadline? Or do you think, and because I was telling Tyler, and I've mentioned it on the pod, I've been a fan of Higashioka, and it now is there may be a real possibility that they're splitting some serious time, more so than Gary's not catching as much on certain days if Higashioka can prove it with the stick, then it's possible. But, obviously if Gary comes back, it's, that's the bet. That's the best.
What you're asking me is basically like, if your house burns down, do you think you would move? And it's like, if it's as bad as
but
that, of course.
What do you think? What do you think
the house won't burn down? Yeah.
What do you think that they could really at that point, what do you think they could really get for him? Anything, or is his value?
Someone will take a flyer on him.
I mean, absolute worst case, if Gary has another year like he did last year, and you're in July 31, then you're probably not going to get too much for him. But they would probably just release him. But like I said, you're asking me, what do you do when the house burns down? Well,
that is very true.
Start over, I guess. But
very true.
Hopefully the house stays standing and you can continue to live in it for a while.
We need the house standing for a championship for sure. That's what we definitely need.
We want prime Gary this year. We're all for it. We're all rooting for him. Bryan, to pivot a little bit, we still have a veteran Yankee that's a free agent right now. We still got a little more money to work with under the luxury tax. Do you think Gardy comes back? And if so, what is that contract looking like in your opinion?
I'll believe Gardy's not coming back when they're on the field and he's not there. I still think he will be there. Their first workout, full squad, is February 22. And you know what? Even if he's not there on the 22nd, he can come back on March 22nd and probably still be ready to do what they're going to need him to do. So, I'll believe he's not a Yankee when I see it. As of right now, he made what? I think it was a little more than 10 last year. He's not going to get 10. It's going to be lower than that. I couldn't believe Jock Peterson only got 7 from the Cubs, and for 7, I would have.
They're doing
some Jock Peterson.
Yeah, they're doing some weird things over there. The Cubs.
Yeah,
they're trading their good players and bringing on Jock. I'm like, what is going on over in Chicago?
Well, my guess for Gardy was 5 to 7, somewhere in that range, and so. But I think that, look, if he can get 5 from the Yankees, would he come back for that, or is it going to have to wind up being more like a 2 or a 4? Maybe you get creative and it winds up being like, I remember that back in the day they did was with Andy Pettitte. They ran out of money at one point because they signed Mark Teixeira, and they told Andy, they're like, we got nothing for you. Like, you can come back for like 3 and have a whole bunch of incentives. And Andy did come back. He wasn't happy about it, but he came back and he hit all the incentives. Maybe that's what you do with Gardy, and you just say, hey, certain number of plate appearances, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get more than that, and you just set the base really low. They've done it before with some great Yankees. If you can do it with Andy Pettitte, maybe you can do it with Brett Gardner too.
Have you had a lot of interaction with Gardy? How is he as a person? Does he smile? Like what
Gardy's
is he?
funny, man. Yeah, no, Gardy's great. I mean, Gardy's kind of like the cut up of that room. So it's a very dry sense of humor with Gardy. He's a smart aleck. Yeah, he keeps everybody on their toes. And I know that he's a prankster. He was like torturing Tyler Wade all last year, dumping baby powder on his chair. They couldn't do like a lot of the pranks that they always did, but he liked to torment Wade last year. That's what we heard. And so, there's a few cut-ups on that team, but Gardy is definitely one of the guys who keeps it loose.
Gardy messing with Tyler Wade just makes all of too much sense, I must say. Bryan, do you think Cash has another move coming this offseason? I think they still need to make room for Darren O'Day on the 40-man. I don't even know if that's entirely official. I don't think they've announced it yet.
No.
Or do you think they may save some money for something like the trade deadline? Do you think Cash has something else, or what do we got moving forward?
I'm sure he would love to keep a little money there for the deadline. Yeah, they do need to clear a roster spot for O'Day, but I don't think that's going to be anything massive. I don't think they're done completely yet. I think he'll continue to look at, and maybe if you can make a move kind of like what they did with O'Day, who only made, I think, 1 year and two and change, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller scale moves is what I see coming. They still haven't even announced their non-roster invites yet, so you'll probably get some guys out of that. But you got to leave a little flexibility and wiggle room there. I still think they're going to bring Gardy back, like I said. So whatever that's going to look like probably determines where else they can go. But look, can they go in and not start the year with Gardy? I suppose that's possible. And then they could go with what they have now and then bring him back at a later day. Who knows? Cash is definitely surprising me. I didn't think the Yankees were going to wind up with Kluber and Jameson Taillon, although we did hear a lot about them doing their homework on Taillon, so I'm not completely surprised about that one. Once I heard that they were asking Garrett Cole for a scouting report there, I said, this one's probably going to happen.
Yeah. Hey, when the offseason started, I was not expecting anything. I was saying, give me DJ. I was very happy when they retained Britton. I think that flew under the radar a lot. So, I wasn't expecting much. So Cash has definitely, pulled some strings and made some big things work this offseason. So, we look forward to it. But, Rob, what else you got here?
So, what would be your guess for now this is kind of, similar. I don't even know how to describe. What is your guess for the starting rotation opening day versus the starting rotation, if we can at all, by October? Like just your guy. Like I'm just curious. I just want to know what you believe.
Isn't that crazy? Because like I said, they're counting on guys like Kluber, Taillon, Severino, Domingo Germán. You know how many innings they combined to pitch last year? One inning they pitched. And those are four guys who could be a really big part of this team come October. So, opening day, I will go Garrett Cole 1, obviously. Kluber 2, just based on reputation. 3, I'm going to go Montgomery because you want a lefty to be somewhere in the mix there, and they only have one lefty as far as I can see. 4, I'll go Taillon just because he's coming back off surgery and you slot him there. And then 5, I think, is wide open. If Germán can be the guy from 2 years ago, fine. My guess is that he won't be because he hasn't faced anybody in almost 2 years now. So it's going to take some time with him. You want to put Michael King in there. You want to put Davy Garcia in there, Clark Schmidt. I mean, I'm open to whatever you want to do with the 5 spot. So my first 4 would be Cole, Kluber, Montgomery, and then Taillon. And then by the end of the season, who knows, guys? Yeah. I mean, you might be in the rotation by the end of the season.
That's true.
But,
I was thinking about pitching for the Yankees this year.
You should look into it. It's a good career path, I hear. It pays well. I mean, anybody's guess. And that's all going to depend on health. Look, if you can have that first 4 healthy for a playoff series and say it's Cole, Kluber, Severino, Taillon. That's pretty good 4. I would like to see that in a postseason series. Yeah, there you go. If they're all firing, great. But, odds are, if recent history tells us anything, somebody's probably going to be, on the outside looking in there.
I know you've been a someone that's made the point that this could be like a 6-man, 7-man rotation.
Oh, I think it's going to be like 8. Yeah. I mean, like,
That's
I
what
think
you
you're going to
need now,
see
I feel
a
like.
revolving door of guys
Yeah.
all year. Yeah.
Do you think also, because me and Tyler have spoken about it, do you think with the possibility of it, even being a 6-7-man rotation, but depending on what they do you think there's a possibility that maybe like a starter could end up moving to the bullpen, like maybe a Domingo Germán could end up going?
Sure.
Because
well, here's the thing: is that you're. Let's also remember that you're coming off a 60-game season where nobody pitched 200 innings, like you couldn't, and so everybody's coming back basically off a short season. So I think a lot of these guys are not going to be built up to where they want to be, and they're going to have to get creative with the innings in that. Even a guy like Cole, who is the workhorse of your rotation, can he throw 200, 220 innings if it winds up being a 162 season? I don't think he can. So they're going to have to split these things out. Like, you're going to have to think about the health of the player. And at some point, like, I don't know how many innings Garrett Cole can pitch. And you've got the other guys who are coming back off injury. How many innings Jordan Montgomery can pitch, knowing that he didn't get a full season last year and he's still coming back from Tommy John. So everybody's kind of timetable has been pushed back here. So I think it's going to take a village in the rotation. You're going to have to get, and I look, as much as you hate to say, oh, you can do a bullpen game, because I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired. Nothing against Chad Green, but I don't really want to see him open a game anymore.
Yeah, nah.
But I feel like we're going to see that at some point, because you're just not going to have the arms ready to go. Like, no matter how many guys you bring in, they're going to run out at some point, because I think they're going to have to be careful with it. The risk of injury is going to be too high.
Hey, pitching is a weird thing, man. It's
you can never have enough. And, I think that even Brian Cashman would always say that, how many times have we asked him, oh, Cash, are you looking to, trade for a starting pitcher or something here at the deadline? And it's like, I'm always looking for a pitcher. The question is, can I get one?
Yeah. And I feel, I'm going to ask, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but I feel like
I don't want to.
I feel like there is a little narrative out there that when Cashman calls, the price is just a little higher for some reason. And it always includes my favorite player in Gleyber Torres. Is that a real thing, or is that just
Yankee
something
tax?
Yeah, is that just something Yankee Twitter just, fondles and throws at the wall?
No, there may be some truth to that. I think that teams know that, look, the Yankees, if they're calling, they're probably desperate. And I think part of that is the market they play in. Part of that is the thought that, hey, the Yankees have deep pockets. They can pay for whatever they need to. And I think that a lot of teams don't want to get taken advantage by the Yankees. Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of a trade with the Yankees and then hear, wow, you were stupid. Why did you give that guy to the Yankees? Because you're going to see him every week on Sunday Night Baseball. If you trade a Didi Gregorius, for example, to the Yankees and he goes and becomes a star, like, do you really want to be watching that happen every week? And look, the D-backs got a pretty good return on that trade. So maybe that's not the best example, but I think that teams don't want to get swindled by the Yankees, and of course they don't. But maybe they are a little more careful there. So I think there could be something to it. I think part of it could also be the New York hype machine, where the prospects in New York, every prospect is the greatest thing ever, and maybe Yankee fans overrate their own prospects sometimes. We've certainly seen can't miss guys, Jesus Montero, and they've missed, and so it happens. And I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at that. But as far as if I was an opposing GM, would I ask for Gleyber Torres? Darn right, sure I would.
You wouldn't get him.
You saw that with the Reds and Castillo this
testing
offseason.
Along with that, what was it like to see the power of Yankee Twitter to basically like kind of, I don't want to say like speak it into existence, but like you saw people just like, Castillo is not going to the Yankees. Please stop tweeting about it. It's not happening. Like,
right.
Stop. What was it like to see that? Like the power of Yankees Twitter just like
to
rose up.
GM, and I think it was like a Sunday night or something. To call his beat and be like,
insane.
Look, enough. Like, stop. We're not trading this guy to the Yankees. And he even left some wiggle room there, but I don't think Castillo's happening. But
yeah,
I'm sure that the call was made, and I'm sure they asked, all right, what would it take to get Luis Castillo? Oh, well, let's start with Gleyber Torres. How about that?
Yeah.
Click. So that happens more than you guys know. I mean, teams Yeah, I mean, you got to make the calls, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you take 100 shots and you hit one, it was worth it. But
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of them end with click, or now it's text messaging.
Yeah.
Now it's text.
They'll leave you on
that was
red.
the one thing I
You
remember.
just send him like
asking
a
Cashman.
GIF back.
Yeah, Cashman is a big gift guy, by the way.
Is he?
But I remember asking him about the winter meetings, and this year it was all being held virtually, and he was so happy that the winter meetings weren't happening in person, because all he ever does is he has to go fly to San Diego or wherever they're going to do it, and then he just sits in a hotel room for 4 days texting people. It's like, I can do that from here.
Yeah.
So I actually don't think it, for him, I don't think it affected him. The winter meetings are great for a lot of the other people to have, kind of conferences and to see each other face to face. But in terms of just trying to work a trade, you can do that from home.
Take him to the bar. Cash buys him a couple drinks. One thing leads
Next
to another.
thing you
and
know,
Luis Castillo's a Yankee.
Wouldn't it be great to go to a bar right now, guys? Like, man,
it'd be amazing. I miss it.
We'll get back to
Maybe
it.
we'll see you outside of stands one day.
Dude, if we go back to normal, like, I will be first one there. Like, I can't wait to be around people and be in a big crowd again.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I agree. You think we're getting fans this year?
Yeah, I do. I don't know when, I don't know how many, but I think
just let me in the doors at some point. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how they're going to pick that. We haven't heard anything of that, but I took I thought it was a good sign at the Buffalo Bills in New York State.
Yeah.
7,000 fans or whatever. So look, they were able to do that there. And, people have asked me the same question about spring training, and I'm thinking, the Super Bowl is going to be right across the street. They're going to have 22,000 people at Raymond James. Now, obviously, Florida is a lot different than New York, but if you can do that at Raymond James for the Bucks in the Super Bowl, then George Steinbrenner Field can have fans too. So I expect that that's going to happen. I expect there will be some fans for spring training. The Red Sox just announced that it was going to be 24% capacity. So if you do that number, that's like 2,500 fans for a spring training game. And if it winds up being a quarter at Yankee Stadium, then I think that's about 10,000 fans for a game.
Count me in.
I remember going to Met games at Shea Stadium where there were less than 10,000 in the seats. So, back in the day. So, hey, we'll take what we can get at this point, right?
One question that I did have for you, and more so relates to your actual job, and less so like all Yankees, but so we saw it's like not Yankee deals this offseason, but there were a couple deals that were thrown out, and I was just curious, and I'm sure the listeners would like to hear it, with just the process that goes into it. When he's a very good reporter, but Ken Rosenthal had two notable ones that were kind of ixnayed at the last moment. I believe it was the Brantley deal and the Brad Hand deal. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, Brad Hand's going to the Mets. Oh my God, Michael Brantley's going to the Blue Jays. But then it ended up not happening. So I was just curious to what goes in to even, we were talking about the rain delays, processes of certain sources that you trust that you can immediately tweet out something or let the fans know about it, where are things that you may have to double check with a certain person in the organization or baseball or your network or anything that you have to get double, how does that kind of play out? Because
it's a delicate balancing act at this point, because look, we all want to be first, right? It's a race, and we're all trying to break stories and beat our competition. When you're in the press box, I want to beat the hell out of every single one of these guys. I like them personally, we're buddies and stuff, but professionally, I want to kick their butts. And so I get mad when somebody has a story ahead of me, because we're all trying to get that. And, that is my worst nightmare, what happened to Ken. And Ken is fantastic at what he does. And if it can happen to him, it can happen to anybody to get burned on something like that. And that's my worst nightmare, to tweet something out and say, X is happening. And then it's X didn't happen. It was Y. And it's that would be the worst feeling in the world. But the idea of getting a story ahead of the rest of your competition, especially in New York, where it's such a competitive beat and atmosphere, it's a great thrill. So yeah, you play with fire, and sometimes you get burned, and it sucks. That part sucks. And it's getting beat on stories, that's hard too. But I think that it comes down to a lot of trusting your sources. And developing those sources, getting to guys. And I think that in that situation, the Brantley stuff, I think the circumstance changed. It reminds me of what was it? Oh, I think it was like 10 years ago. The Yankees were going to get Cliff Lee. Like, it was going to happen.
Oh,
yes. Cliff Lee was coming to the Yankees. And if you reported it in that minute, the Yankees about to acquire Cliff Lee, that was true. But then it changed. And Cliff Lee did not come to the Yankees. So if you go back and look at those stories, you look like, oh, you got it wrong. Well, not necessarily, because it was happening in that moment. I remember I mentioned Teixeira. Teixeira was going to Boston. It was going to happen, and then it didn't happen. And the Yankees were out. The Yankees were out on Teixeira. Then they were in. So that's the challenge of kind of trying to keep up with something that is not completely done yet. Sometimes you think it's on the 1 yard line and it's going to cross. Sometimes you get stopped at the goal line and it goes all the way back for for an interception or whatever. Am I using too many football metaphors here?
No, it's perfectly fine.
Can you tell I'm starting to think about the Super Bowl already? So
we're in the spirit.
Who do you got in the game this weekend?
I got to go with the home team. I think it's so cool to have a home team in the Super Bowl. So I'll go Bucks. Cool. I've learned, do not bet against Tom Brady.
Yes, very smart.
He could be out there 75 years old. He'll probably still win a football game. So
insane.
Until he proves me otherwise, I will not bet against Tom Brady.
Yes.
Go to Super Bowl snack. What do we got?
Ooh, I think you got to go with like
pizza. Could be wings.
I'm a big hot wing guy. Like, I need a good plate of wings, like a good buffalo wing spread.
Oh yeah.
Pizza's great. We got to have some pizza there. Got to have some chips and dip. But if you don't have the wings, that's hard for me. Yeah. So because I could crush a plate of wings.
I bet you could. We all can. I'm excited. I'm excited for some Super Bowl food. I got 2 questions in one for you, real quick, Brian.
Okay.
Favorite Yanks postseason moment while you've been covering them, and also a memorable kind of player interaction that you have that you can tell. We can keep the PG on here.
Okay. Postseason, it's easy because it's the final out of the 2009 World Series. That was such a crazy year to be with that team from the beginning. Being there on the first day of pitchers and catchers and going everywhere they went with the closing of the old stadium, the opening of a new one. I just remember somewhat in Game 6, like Matsui was going nuts. He had 6 RBIs, and it was like I remember probably around the 5th or 6th inning, the stadium was excuse me. Stadium was nuts.
You can let it rip on this podcast. Right. We are fully okay.
I usually try and keep it clean, but oops.
Hey, we were keeping it clean too.
We're trying to keep it clean for you.
Anyway, the stadium was nuts. And, I remember around the 5th or 6th inning looking around and being like, the Yankees are going to win the World Series tonight. And this is pretty cool. Like, take a minute to appreciate this. And and I'm going to be writing the story. And that was pretty awesome. And then, the final out, of course, Shane Victorino hits the ground ball to Robbie Cano and throws it to Mark Teixeira. And the party is on, the celebration's on. And, being down in the clubhouse with the champagne celebration. And just, so much going on that year, especially with the opening of the new stadium. And CC was there and AJ and Teixeira. Like, it was such a cool time to be around the Yankees. So that was really special. And then the second question, sorry, I got sidetracked.
We just did postseason. I'm just saying
player interaction, was it?
Yeah, play interaction, like I don't know, a joke or anything, whatever you got.
There's so many.
Something that's
I just watched this video the other day, so I'll give you this one. Like, I was on the field doing a hit for MLB Network, and it was 2017. It had to be because Matt Holliday was there. And
love Matt Holliday. It just seems like
Holliday
such a good dude.
Good dude. He really was. And so I'm on the field in a suit and tie, and MLB Network went to a commercial break. And so I'm just standing there, and here comes Holliday and here comes Judge, and they've got a football. And like, I'm joking, and I turn to him. I'm kind of like this, and he throws me a spiral. And he hits me with it, and I'm like, okay. And then we're playing catch across the outfield while I'm waiting on a commercial break with Aaron Judge.
Awesome. That's great. Warmed up.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was funny, except then I realized, like, what happens if I throw a spiral to Judge and I break his finger? Like, how much are people going to hate this? Like, it's Aaron Judge. This is 2017, so he's going to be Rookie of the Year, 52 homers, all that. Yeah. What if it's me who just throws him a football and for freak injury, I break his finger? And he's
hopefully
out
you're the first to get that story out.
Yeah, well, I better be at that point. But
The
like,
first one to run.
that's also the end of my career, right?
Yeah.
So fortunately, he caught it. He told me, I think he said something like nice spiral or whatever, and that was the end of that. But you know, go with that.
Love that.
There's
Love
the
that.
story. Yeah, just a friendly game of catch with Judge.
Well, Bryan, we'll let you go. I'm sure there's a lot more some news that's heading out tonight, you know, maybe some Bauer deals or any other Yankee deals that may be happening. We really appreciate you joining and spending some time with us and just chatting with us on the pod.
All right, thanks guys. Thanks for having me. Sorry for the F-bomb.
No, you're fine.
It's all good. It's all good. So thanks again, Bryan, and we will catch you guys next time.